Annie Advisor solution. So it's our pleasure to welcome you all here today. Thank you so much to everyone for attending. So my name is Molly. I work with the European SchoolNet, who are hosting today's event. I'm joined today by my two colleagues, Tanya and Raman. Tanya is going to be moderating today's event, and Raman will be working in the background on Microsoft Teams just to ensure that everything runs smoothly throughout the webinar. So I think we're ready to begin. Firstly, I'd like to give a few brief words on the IMPACT EdTech project. So IMPACT EdTech is a European incubator-accelerator for startups and SMEs. We are a consortium of 3 partners with complementary expertise. European SchoolNet is a network of 33 ministries of education. ISDE is a worldwide leader in digital education, and Funding Box is an EU expert in funding opportunities, knowledge and connections. So far, throughout the course of the project, we've supported 43 digital education innovators. We have achieved this with our first open call and our remote schooling open call. Annie Advisor is a participant of our first open call, which is just coming to an end this month. So our second call finished up in April, which supported startups whose solutions helped to address challenges of remote schooling during the pandemic. And our third open call is well underway. Applications just closed this week, so we'll soon determine which startups will participate in this call. So just to give a very brief overview of our goals, with the IMPACT EdTech project, we seek to enhance learning experiences, foster personalised and inclusive educational models, and open a new era of human-centred digital education. So a few quick words as well about the first open call. So this open call targeted EdTech solutions that can work towards more inclusive education, personalised learning and skills development, which is relevant for today's world. So there were 233 startups eligible for this call, and only 15 were selected to take part in the incubation program, which is a 4-month program where the startups work to progress and develop their solution. And then following this, just 7 startups were selected to move forward to the acceleration program, Annie Advisor being one of them. Today's webinar aims to showcase the results of both programs, but particularly the acceleration stage, where the startup had the opportunity to pilot their solutions in schools and classrooms. So we'll hear today from the Annie Advisor team and their piloting teachers on their experiences and the results of the program. So what then makes IMPACT EdTech unique? So with the project, we envisioned that the acceleration stage would be equally beneficial for startups, their mentors, as well as the teachers and schools involved. It provides the startups with access to equity-free financial support, business and educational mentoring and piloting in real educational settings. And for the teachers and schools, they have access to the most innovative technologies that are currently in the market. They have the opportunity to try the newest products on the market, to test these and to provide their feedback. Finally, in doing so, they can support innovators in improving their solutions and help to achieve EdTech excellency across Europe. So thank you again to everyone for attending. We hope you enjoy today's webinar. So I've included the IMPACT EdTech social media handles and our website if you'd like to find out more details about the project. I've also left my email address here. If you have any questions about the project, please feel free to reach out. And now I will pass the floor to Tanya, who will be moderating this event. Tanya is going to introduce us to the Annie Advisor team.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Molly, for the introduction. So welcome to everyone to this webinar and welcome to the Annie Advisor team. It's glad to see so many familiar faces. So hi to everyone. So today we're going to hear the experience of the Annie Advisor team, their pilot teacher and their educational mentor in the program of IMPACT EdTech that they have been participating for the past 3 or 4 months. So welcome. To the 3 of you, Miska, Leonardo, and Anaida. So we're going to have some housekeeping rules. The 3 of you are going to have around 10 minutes each to present the part of the presentation you want to tell us today. So the perspective of the educational mentor, the perspective of the startup, and the perspective of the pilot teacher. And then we will move on to a Q&A that will last also around 10 minutes. If we all keep the times, maybe we have a 10 minutes of Q&A, if not a little bit less. So please, I'm gonna ask you kindly to respect the time, or I might have to interrupt any of you to let some room for the questions, of the burning questions that we're going to have from our audience. So we have with us Miska, the co-founder of Ani Advisor, who is going to be the first one on taking the floor. So welcome, Miska, and the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Tanya. Yes, let me open the presentation. So hi everybody, and thanks for taking the time today on Friday afternoon to listen to our experiences and about the Ani Advisor solution. So I'm the CEO of Ani Advisor, and we are based out of Helsinki, Finland. I saw some other people sharing their locations in the chat, so I wanted to drop that in there. And I won't go into the agenda as Tanya already presented it, but there's going to be like 3 perspectives on the use of Ani during this spring and seeing how it has developed during this time. And I'll start talking first about what is Ani and what we learned during the piloting experience these past few months, and it was quite a lot. But in a nutshell, the issue we try to address, or what we work on with Ani Advisor, is trying to prevent school dropouts or other issues with student well-being. So especially in secondary education is our current focus, but we've already had some use cases out of it as well. So unfortunately, it's quite a common issue that students drop out of their schooling, or they have other problems which prevent them from continuing their studies at the pace that they would hope for themselves. And this has been exacerbated by the corona situation. So especially when there's been distance education or lacking services because of corona, then it's gotten a little bit worse, unfortunately. And the kind of core issue we see, which was actually related to a recent study, is that out of every class, there's on average 5 students who need help with their mental well-being, and only 1 of them on average will seek support. So there's 4 out of 5 who need help but aren't getting it because it's kind of a big threshold. There's some stigma related to asking for help, or it's somehow inconvenient to get it. So this is what we try to help with Ani. And in practice, Ani is a chatbot which contacts the students over instant message or SMS and basically offers them help services. And usually how this would work is that once every month or once every 2 months, Ani would reach out to the students and ask, like, is there anything we can help you with? And then based on the students' answers, direct them to different services. So for example, if you say that, hey, I need help with my mental well-being, and then you would say like, I have this and this type of issue, you might be directed to a psychologist or an advisor at your school or your responsible teacher or a special needs educator or something like that. So what Ani does is it lowers the threshold of getting help and makes it easier to find the services available to you as a student. So that it wouldn't be such a difficult thing, or it wouldn't be such a high threshold to get help. And this is the basic idea. And it is quite simple in a nutshell, just contacting the students and asking them directly. And from the results, which we'll talk about later on, we already see that this works quite well. So on average, more than 80% of students will answer the messages, and they quite like this way of interaction, as opposed to other ways of finding help, which can be trickier. But once the students have reported their support needs, we also provide this tool for the school to see which students need their help, and there's a list of students and the kind of help they need. And depending on your role, you will see different help needs in this list. And it's kind of a simple and easy way to organize and figure out who's gotten help and who hasn't yet. And maybe you need to redirect somebody to another professional. And finally, one part which we've been developing now very actively during the program is this analytics part. So after you've done more than one of these like survey campaigns or sent out a lot of messages, we'll provide statistics about how the students felt about them and how their support needs have been progressing and so on. So just getting a little bit of insight and help decision making at the school and seeing what, for example, programs might be needing more resources than others. But that's the Ani solution in a nutshell. So it is a chatbot, and as mentioned, over text messages or instant messages, depending on the case. But now, during the piloting phase, which were done in 3 countries, one of which is Sweden, which Anaida will be explaining about, or her perspective comes from the Swedish pilot, but she will also be explaining about the experience in Greece and Croatia. And this was our first time trying the Ani solution outside of Finland, where we are based from. So we already had experience here with vocational schooling and secondary education at large, but we didn't know how would this fit the kind of international space. What are the peculiarities? What are the differences? What are the similarities that we need to take into account when we develop Annie. And I can say we learned quite a lot in a very short time, and there's room for improvement, but the core concept seems to work, which is always encouraging. So lesson number one was that the support needs that we have in Annie, so the kind of issues students have, are usually quite similar even between countries, now that we have 4 points of comparison. But then again, there are some differences. So here's the example of the survey flow in Greek. So how students replied to the messages, and depending on their answers, they were redirected to another response, and finally to a professional who would help them. And these were, let's say, like 90% the same across countries, but depending on the students, there might be differences, like new support categories that you wanted to emphasize, which were in your country more prevalent, or some things that weren't relevant at your school, or services you didn't have, so you couldn't direct to. But overall, it seems they're quite similar, but not quite the same. The second and maybe like main learning for us was that the students actually need to trust this chatbot quite a lot. And this is something Anaida will talk about later, but they need to feel that this chatbot and the service has my best intention in mind, and this is something that I can, without worry, give my data to. And this takes some convincing at this point, and it's something that we need to work on, and how we communicate to the students that they actually know that we're trying to help them. But after the students are convinced, it seems to be working quite nicely. So we did a survey after the pilots and found out that on average, 88% of students who tried Annie would actually like to have it at their school. And these are teenagers, mostly the respondents. So this is quite a high level of satisfaction, especially for this target group. But still some work to be done here, but encouraging nonetheless. The kind of technical detail which I won't bother you too much with is that there are differences in how you deliver messages across country borders. So we had previously worked in Finland, and we've done some trials for other countries. But for example, getting a phone number in Croatia that we could deliver SMS messages to through the students was trickier than we thought. It took longer. There were some things that we were supposed to get that they said we would get that we didn't. And this was the same for every country. So we just need to kind of figure out a simple way that we can replicate in every country, so that the messages get delivered easily and we can provide the same level of experience across countries. So there's a bit of delay, but it seems to work fine in the end once we have figured these out. But during the pilots also, this was something that we learned quite a little bit about. So just simply delivering text messages isn't quite as simple as it sounds, or we had thought at least. On a final note, before I hand over to Anaida, is the statistics. So we had very different sizes of pilot groups in each country, but every case was a secondary education case. So this is the same level of education that they were participating in, but the ratios of students who requested support out of those that got the message varied quite a lot. So in Sweden, they were about 50%, in Croatia about 19%, and in Greece about 20% or 28%. And in Finland, our average is 15, which is a little bit under. The sample sizes are so small that we can't make any like academic judgments about this, but it's nonetheless interesting that there's quite a bit of variation. But the important thing here is that there are students who are willing to admit support needs to a chatbot. And the kind of types of support needs that we got are not the easiest kind always, that it can be related to mental well-being or social issues, not just like needing academic help or tutoring or something like that. But all in all, as a final note, the pilots were hugely beneficial for us, and all of the teachers who provided in the usage and the schools were like giving us feedback and participating in such a way that it allowed us to develop the solution very quickly and learn quickly from these difficulties. So all credit goes to them for all the development we did during these 2 months. And on that note, Anaida, would you like to explain about the experience of piloting Annie at the school?
Thank you very much, Miska. Thank you very much for this presentation. I think that it's really interesting the difference between the percentages that you gave between Sweden, Croatia, and Greece. I would also like to see if you had the opportunity to test in other countries, what would that percentages look like, and also what's I mean, if you could also talk about it later in the Q&A, but what's the relationship between those percentages and maybe the awareness and the raising awareness of the countries and the issues of mental health and among the students. You know, I was also like thinking about that and if that had an impact on these numbers. But I will maybe ask you later. So thank you very much. And Aina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tanya. So I can thank you, Miska. I will ask you, Miska, if it's possible to just continue the. Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you in a beautiful Friday afternoon. I'm very, very nervous, so if my speech is not coherent, please excuse me. Now I will present the study from the point of view of the people who implement it. Our team, our 3 countries was and is very exciting of the idea of the study, but practically was not very easy and not very simple. The process of implementation of the study in school happened in 2 steps: introduction to the staff and teachers, and introduction to the students and parents. There were many meetings, discussions, and presentations. During the process, we met many challenges. First, all the groups were very skeptical, and there was a lot of work for convincing them in participation, especially because it was during the exam time. As a teacher, it was very difficult and almost impossible to reach all the staff and the students we need for such a study, and all the students we promised for the study. Another challenge was the consent. This consent limited the participation of the students, and I can explain why. There are already policies of data protection in schools, and different consents are required in the beginning of the school year. It was difficult to reach parents in such a short time in the end of the year, school year, and during the exams to obtain new consents. So this was a limitation. Another challenge was the creation of the message for chatbot. During the school year, the students already discuss some of their problems with the staff and teacher existing in schools. It was a big challenge to create an interesting and engaging message to open the curiosity in students. Moreover, we found that the study must be limited to the staff existing in school. Even the students' needs exceeded the possibilities of the schools. This created a skeptical situation about the study, but we we succeeded with it. Another challenge, one of the biggest, was to engage students in the study. This was the most difficult part. The study was presented like an opportunity to express themselves, students, and their needs without being judged. In Sweden, an NGO had a decisive role in this part. And as a result, you can see the participation was 50% in answering the messages. We have also opportunities. Yes. We saw many opportunities with any advisor. So it's very useful to have any advisor as chatbot, as a part of school's lives, to track from time to time the students' needs and to give new and more perspective about students, to design the school's life, and why not the teaching methods. Also, it's very useful to evaluate in what degree students' needs were solved by qualified staff, how long time take to answer their needs, and with what results. And this can give any advisor statistics. It's very useful, and it is an opportunity for schools to evaluate the students' evolution regarding their needs after the meeting with qualified staff and after they answer to the messages. And at last but not least, one of the important opportunities that we can have is to prevent the dropout of school. Is the most important issue for schools. if the staff of the school and the teacher understand the problem the student have and see and understand the problem, they can find a proper solution to keep the student in school. We have also some results. I don't have statistics in my results, but I have some frames of mind. So the results indicate, I don't know if it's results. Yes, the results indicate that the students can answer different, and it's very important to the way they are asked. It is important how we put the question to see from which perspective is important to find the answer. So example, we have a case about the motivation. Many students express the lack of motivation, but without to find a reason and without to find a without to find a solution. But in this study, they indicate clear that what they need, what they are their needs. So for example, they need a simple explanation, they need more active school life, they need connect discussion with real life in the taught subjects. They want more activities in groups. These are simple and already know things, but clearly expressed by students. We find also that the students didn't dare sometimes to talk about their issues. And in this case, we have another case when students that never talked before about their personal things, they dare to discuss them and to express them in this chat. And I have some, I don't know if it's permitted to say, some alcohol issues. This is what we found. We have also wow finding. For example, what we find, it's generally the school existing in schools are not enough for students' needs. I think that is already known, but I refer now regarding to the design of schools life as a whole, to cover the expectation and the evolution of these children that are not the same children that we know. And another thing that we find that is very important, it is to involve external partners in school's life, like doctors, psychologists, social workers. In this way, it creates new opportunities for discussion and inclusion, and students are more interesting to have an open dialogue. And after the survey of in the end of the study, all the teachers who saw the results and all the students were very exciting, and will want to see this Any Advisor, this chatbot, as a part of their school life. This was mine and my colleagues' point of view. Thank you for listening.
Thanks to you for sharing. And I think that one of the, as you said, one of the important things during this period, I don't know if you agree with me, but it was also the lack of motivation of students, because they were facing this new remote for a long time, then hybrid, then go back to remote, then maybe go to class 1 week, maybe again, then get confined again. So I guess in that situation that is super evolving and super changing from minute to minute even, and from day to day. I remember in Spain, a kid going to school and maybe getting a positive case in their class and then going back home. So I guess that for you, for the teachers, was a really challenge, right? And I think here is where solutions like Annie come into place to really identify if, for example, these changes are also contributing to this lack of motivation and maybe give you the tools to try to tackle it or to try to support them better. So thank you for bringing this up into the conversation, Anaira. And now we're moving on to our next speaker, Leonardo, as educational mentor and as the one that guided also Annie advisor and gave your feedback on the solution. So what can you tell us about it and about these months of testing?
Hi everyone, thank you for coming and hear us. And here we are. So judging from the partners' interventions, I can give you a spoiler. I think recognition of vulnerability is the key. I would like to give a wider view on the topic of the issues of students. I am a philosophy, history, and support teacher here in Italy. And I am one of the responsible for inclusion in my school. So we coordinate all the actions of help aimed at students with a wide range of needs. In Italy, when you say special needs, you mean also specific learning disorders, disability, psychological distress, social-cultural disadvantages. So it's more like a political category. I would like to start from an anecdote. Last year, my school's quality supervisor asked us responsible for inclusion to build a tool to monitor the family's satisfaction with regard to the teachers taking over of special needs. We administered a questionnaire and found out that some parents pointed out that the behavior of some colleagues was inconsistent with the students' personalized plan. So this made us realize that the benefit the questionnaire could provide to our work wasn't just about feedback, but also about monitoring, and that we had better use it at least halfway through the year instead of only in the end. So this is about helping relationship, which needs help, which need feedback and monitoring. Could you ask you, Miska, to go ahead, please? Yeah. So even in school, we need feedback and monitoring, but students or families seldom express themselves, especially if they're not actively asked. So the implementation of ANI in the pilot schools has shown that it did help problems appear, which teachers weren't aware of. So the question is, why hadn't the students expressed them before? So from the school's point of view, the first step would be at least to show interest in their opinion, and as I shall say later, to be a welcoming environment with the least possible prejudice. Could you go ahead, Miska, please? Okay, so instead, from the student's point of view, their tendency to ask for help may depend on two main factors. On the one hand, self-awareness, and on the other, engagement. As for the former, they might not know what their problem is, and I already told that. They might not have thought of it clear before. So the aspect of the app that might help in that is an open taxonomy of needs. The option, which is usually named as other in the list of problems, implies the intervention of a professional, sometimes an external professional, whose task would be not only to take over the request, but to name the issue. So if applicable, they will also integrate the taxonomy of needs. That's why when we worked on the width of options included in it, we agreed on a sort of a middle position, like the Greek philosopher Aristotle, who said that virtue stays always in the middle. So on the one hand, coordinates are important, but also personalization. Going back to the other factor influencing students' reactivity, I mean engagement, it does not necessarily correspond to the level of self-awareness. I mean, a student may be very active in their schoolwork, but not very aware of their problems. Vice versa, they might be demotivated, as we said before, but have a clear vision of the reason why. So the only way to activate such a student is, again, to show at least authentic interest in them. A third element may be stigma. Miska, please go ahead. Yeah, in our society, it can be sometimes rather difficult to admit one's need for help. By the way, we know that stigma is still stronger with regard to certain types of need, most notably mental health issues, etc. So this is somewhat transversal among different cultures, even if nowadays teenagers may seem to be more and more aware of the theme, fortunately. You can go, for example, on TikTok, and you'll see plenty of videos trying to normalize a number of mental conditions, which we have grown to perceive as taboo. So I don't know what to say, lucky them. Anyway, these kinds of problems are still more difficult to take care of when the student has some conflict with their environment, with their family. In this case, school represents sort of an alternative. It is important that they show themselves as understanding as possible, and that their policies are clearly stated in some official document. I mean, if the school is actually inclusive towards people with disabilities or with mental health issues, or who belong to minorities, either ethnic or sexual, etc., this has to be official and clearly highlighted, so that families and obviously students know which kind of social structure they are entering. In this sense, clarity builds trust, builds sense of trust, and we'll know how fundamental it is when it comes to disclosing one's information and needs. Of course, a little bit of distrust has to be taken into account. Teens generally tend to be more distrustful than younger children, and this distrust is functional to their own protection. During the pilot, one of the main problems of the school, as Anaya said before, was gathering the consent form for the sharing of personal data. So this resistance, which understandably involves both students and families, can be lowered if actions become structural. If a service like Ani Advisor is adopted since the beginning of the school year with consent forms that are less specific, that's to say, that they regard the whole package of communication the school needs to properly function, at that point, families and students can perceive it less as a risk, as a novelty, and more as an ingredient to the institution. Same goes for any kind of other service regarding sensitive data, for example, counseling or psychological services. On the one hand, they work better if they're structural, but students and family, have to be reminded from time to time that they are available in order to be used. Please, Miska, let's go ahead. Okay, so one last relevant element is logistic, is practicability. An advisor managed to cover many students in a short time, something a common human being could never be capable of. Considering that, we've asked ourselves if it is important for the app to be smarter, and maybe it might be. If the numbers of the requests were to be too high or too fast, that the school professionals could find themselves overwhelmed. And that's why the developers thought of boosting Ani's intelligence so that it can provide sort of a waiting room for students. It needs to be connected with the right professional. For example, Ani might grant instant access to resources that don't need further intervention by someone. Instead, as for the other needs, the more complex needs, it is crucial that the focus stays in the track of addressing problems rather than solving them. Solution is not a realistic indicator of quality, even for the school itself. The real mission of the app and the school should be to make needs emerge, to identify them, to address them, and to monitor the actions implemented. So, given all that, the success of Ani in the future, I think it depends on many factors. First of all, the complexity of the school. If the students are few, a principal might think that the professionals are able to take care of any problem. On the contrary, we have highlighted the existence of hidden needs which tend to escape detection. Another case, completely different, might be that of a complex school which is endowed with a discrete number of professionals and of services activated with respect to the number of students. Such an institution might be brought to overestimate itself. So this means the addition to any advisor will sometimes depend on the services or logistic issues or by financial resources, but sometimes also by cultural limitations. So the answers to the second level, more complex than the first one, may be existential, but I am a philosopher, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. In a nutshell, I think we all must learn that it is okay to admit our vulnerability in front of complexity. So that's a task we could easily achieve with a bit of goodwill. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Leonardo, for this presentation. I mean, we went from Aristotle to TikTok, so I think this presentation was really, really complete. I really liked it, and also like it just reinforces my curiosity, and I also said the curiosity on the chat since the beginning that I wanted to ask Miska, no, like the correlation between mental health, school performance, and all of this, because in the end this year with all the COVID crisis, we have like adults, students, as you said, maybe students and younger people have less stigma than us or than adults about or regarding about the topic of mental health, which is a topic, it's a hot topic right now. It's a topic that also something that you said, depending on the complexity, on the context, on the culture, you might have less issues or less concerns on talking about it, or you would do it openly. So I think that's something really interesting, and also something I pick up from your intervention. It's also the need of the structural change to make these kind of tools like to support them, because in the end it's if we just use them as such, maybe they are just trying to put a little bit of a plaster in a bigger wound, but actually for them to succeed, what they need is to be, as you said, included since the beginning, not as a novelty, but as a fact, something we need to take into account. So thank you very much for that. And now we have 10 minutes. That's great. Thank you everyone for keeping your time. We have 10 minutes for Q&A. I see a lot of questions in the chat. So please, I'm just gonna tell everyone, all the attendees, that if we don't have the time to cover your question in the Q&A, please feel free to or write directly to Miska. You can see his email there, or write directly to us, and we will try to answer them or liaise with the startup. So just don't hesitate to do that, and don't think we forget you if we don't get to ask you a question. Okay. So one question from Manuela from the chat, and I guess it's a question for Miska. What are the next steps for Annie now?
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
yes.
Thank you.
There are a lot of things are next for Annie. So as mentioned, we've done most of our work in Finland to date, and that's shifting now. So we're starting work with other countries in Europe, primarily Italy and Spain are the first one where we're going, and we're trying to figure out a way, which also Leonardo presented, to have like a taxonomy of support needs that applies everywhere roughly. There are gonna be customizations per school, but trying to have like a frame, and this is something we've been doing during this spring. And Annie-wise, we're making it kind of more complete and more easy to use is the short one. So we already do quite complex chat flows. There's the support and intervention system, and then there's the like chat flow management part in the product. And these are all like, we're working a lot to make them as simple as possible, so you can kind of pick them up without any training and start using them. And I think on the like service and starting with Annie side, we have a lot of work to do, as was discussed a lot today, and kind of making sure that it's part of the school's infrastructure as a whole, and it comes at a smart time in the year, that it's not during the final tests as it was now, but instead in the beginning of the year. We don't have any like specific concrete plans regarding like which countries we'll work with in Europe, but at least the ones I mentioned. So Italy, Spain, and Sweden are actually first on the list, but if there are other countries who are interested perhaps participating, we'd be happy to talk to you.
Thank you very much for your answer. Well, you could attendees, you heard him. If there are any other countries and you're here and you're a teacher from those countries, please don't hesitate to reach out to them. I guess your feedback and your experience will be really useful for the team of Annie Advisor. And Miska, we wish you the best of luck after the finalization of the program of IMPACT EdTech. And yes, it's I guess one of the main obstacles is also like tackling this complexity depending on where you are and which school you're trying to put trying to use any advisor in. So another question from the audience, from Felix this time. And this is it's a question that is related to my curiosity that I said is, have you made any correlations between mental health problems and academic performance? Thanks to Annie. I don't know if Miska, you want to start, but Anaida and Leonardo, feel free to also intervene.
I think that makes sense. So I'll make some comments about our kind of observations, and happy to hear your perspective. But what we see from the interviews we've done and what we know about dropouts at schools is that most dropouts are related to mental well-being issues, like more than half, independent of context. So sometimes as high as 80 or 90%, but it depends. So students usually don't drop out of programs because of like academic issues or not finding the information or not making the course sign up on time. But it is related to something else, which are usually mental or social well-being issues. The correlations are not always direct, but there's usually a kind of in between. So if you don't feel well, your studies don't progress and you don't get any grades, or your grades are low. And we see that in contexts where the mental well-being is better, then they'll do better in their school. So this is like the general theme, which we also see from our own data and interviews. But Leonardo and Ida, maybe you have anything to add?
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak first. So it depends on the issue. There is not something like a mental health issue in general. It depends on the nature of the issue. So you can very easily find students who are excellent in their schooling, in their work, because they tend to be perfectionists, for example, but they suffer very much from it. And this is not a situation of health, but it doesn't appear. That's to say that we don't usually see that as a problem, but we should. So Miska covered the theme of the dropout, but as a teacher, I'm more interested in the well-being of the student instead of in envisaging the problem from the point of view of the attendance of school.
Thank you very much, Leonardo. Anaida, do you want to comment on this question?
Yes, I just want to say that it's dependent how we define the mental issues. So which kind, exactly, so Leonardo said, there are students with mental problems. They are every day in school, and there are students without problem, and they are not coming to school. So depends. There are many factors here. It's not quite related to them together. So depend how you define this, I can say.
Thank you very much for all your comments. It's what you said, like there's no one mental health issue. There are many, and there are many that can be detected, cannot be detected. And it's something that it's really interesting, no? That Leonardo said it's not only about the dropout, or if you have an A, a B, or a C, it's more about how you're feeling while you're getting those grades. Like maybe sometimes, yes, you're performing great, but doesn't mean your well-being is perfectly okay and is being supported and is being encouraged. So thank you very much for your insights on this. I'm going to move to another question. I think maybe this is more administrative and technical, so I'm going to ask Miska. So the service and the product that is Annie Advisor, are the schools paying for this kind of technology, or is something you envisage to have maybe a partnership with ministries of education? So in the end, like who ends up paying this service?
Yeah, so the most common model we have is that it's purchased either by the school or the municipality, and it depends like who is responsible for buying technology and licenses for software like this. It depends on the country and even on the municipality within the country. But we've had cases where it's an NGO or a fund who wants to boost student well-being, and they'll pay for the usage as a whole because it's something they want to have and know that schools might not have the budget for, even though it's not like a hugely expensive solution. But the simple answer is that either school or the municipality, but it depends.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. So I guess, Felix, that gives you the answer to see if maybe your municipality, your school, or any other organization can support your school on getting services like Annie Advisor. And I'm gonna go to one last big question, and then I'm gonna have to wrap up the webinar. And it's that in order to distribute this solution, Felix is asking again, every student needs to have a cell phone. Or yes, no? And if so, could this represent another issue since in many schools, cell phones are forbidden?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what we know from European data is that at this point, most students will have a cell phone. They're not necessarily allowed to have it at school, but they'll usually have one, a personal one. And we have a couple ways of delivering messages to them, but usually these kind of surveys or chat flows are active for several days. So they'll get them on, let's say, Tuesday morning, and then they have until Friday end of day to reply or whatever. And they usually answer during the first day, and some will answer on the second. So we haven't had an issue so far with this, but if they don't have a personal cell phone, then we don't at the moment have a way to deliver messages to them. We experimented with email, but it turns out that teenagers don't read email, so it doesn't work.
Okay, so the answer would be yes, you need a cell phone, but you don't necessarily have to use it during class while you're listening to Leonardo or Anaida giving you their subject. So thank you very much for your answers. And I'm just gonna go, okay, one last question from Felix, because I see that he has a lot of questions. Does any advisor service has any kind of parental control?
Not at the moment. So at the consent stage, it's either approved by the student or the parent and the student, depending on their age. And but the support needs are gotten directly from the student. So the parent doesn't like approve that they need help or anything like that. And this is usually how the services already work. But at the point where they're getting some kind of services from the school, especially if it's kind of a longer support program, then the school will be kind of liaising with the parent usually. But it depends on the school how that's organized. But there were this, for example, one of the pilots teachers were asking about like, hey, what if the problem is the parent? How would the consent go then? So it's kind of separated, but we try to keep them in the loop as best we can. But in the end, it's the school's work.
That's a really interesting comment. No? What if the problem comes from the family environment? How do we act there? So thank you very much, and Felix, thank you very much for your questions. And if you or any other attendee have any further questions, please don't hesitate to write Miska or write the IMPACT EdTech team. I'm just gonna close this session, but before I'm gonna ask Miska, Leonardo, and Anaida, if you could summarize this experience with IMPACT EdTech and your role in it with one word, what would it be?
This is an easy question for me. I'm going to go with awesome.
Awesome. Okay, Anaida?
It was a challenge, but a good challenge.
Okay, positive challenge. That's
Yes.
amazing. Leonardo?
For me, it was very satisfying.
Okay, so awesome, satisfying, and a positive challenge. So I guess that makes us gives us a positive closing for today's webinar. So thank you very much to the three of you for sharing your experiences here with us, and thank you very much for the attendees for being here today. I'm just going to give the floor to Molly to close this session, and I hope to see you in the future. Best of luck to all of you, to the Ani Advisor, and to Leonardo and Anaida. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yes, thank you so much to everyone for attending this afternoon's webinar. Thank you so much to Miska, Anaida, and Leonardo for your really insightful, really interesting presentations. It was really great to hear about the progress of the ANI Advisor solution over the course of the IMPACT EdTech program and the acceleration stage. On behalf of the consortium of the IMPACT EdTech program, we would like to thank you all so much for attending today's event. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at the email address that I left in the presentation. And also I see Miska has provided his contact details if you have any questions directly for the ANI team. Please as well, for all of those in attendance today, just don't forget to pop your details into the participants form if you'd like to receive a certificate of participation for today's event. Yeah, so we hope you all have a great Friday evening. Thank you again to everyone.
Bye. See you
Bye.
next time.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.